And welcome to another show, the Kam Johal show. We're here today with my guest Malvinder here. He's going to be sharing his story about his business conquest during COVID. So before we go to that, there is a petition out right now which will allow the debate in Parliament for all those that are undocumented people living in this country who've been here for over 5 years. So, we're allowed to start petitions, which will mean that the government is forced into debating the subject. We need 100,000 signatures on any petition before the UK Parliament will openly hold a debate about that. I believe that there's about 53,000 signatures so far. So we need, another 48,000 signatures on that petition before it is debated in Parliament. So if you've got an interest and you feel that those that have been here in this country for longer than 5 years should at least have the opportunity to remain, especially with Brexit going on, we can have that petition. It's reached 57,000 signatures right now. So it's a case of go on there, sign the petition, and you will have the opportunity to make the government debate that issue, and at least there's an opportunity for those people to remain in this country. And I know it's a very big thing for some members of our community, so it's quite an important thing. We've had many programs about that. Vajijita Singh's been talking about that over the weekend, so it's something that we should support. And those of you that hold views and want to support that, please go and do that. So we'll crack on with the show now. So welcome once again to those of you that are watching and new viewers that we're getting on board on a regular basis, which I really appreciate. So thank you so much. And ਆਪਾਂ debate ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ show ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਜਾਂ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ. The thing about doing this show in Punjabi is that obviously all those people that don't speak Punjabi will not be able to understand. We're going to do some further shows. A lot of changes coming on KTV. So we're going to be doing some further shows. Punjabi ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ show ਆਉਣਗੀਆਂ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ. So we will keep you happy. We don't want to upset any of our viewers. So anyway, on to now my guest today. Very interesting story. Very young man. Very young in terms that I think is the youngest, certainly the youngest entrepreneur that we've had on the show. Welcome to the show, Malvinder.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. No problem. So listen, you haven't had to travel far. So local boy.
Yep, local.
Born and bred.
Yep.
So the family now in Solihull?
Sutton Coldfield.
Sutton Coldfield, close enough.
Close
I'm a Leicester boy, so they all look the same to me, right? So tell us, Malvinder. So when were you born? And because I understand your grandparents live very close to our studios in West Brom.
Yep.
And you worked here?
Yep, worked here, very close to the studios as well.
Okay.
So about myself, so born and brought up in Handsworth, Birmingham, just literally down the road from these studios. From a normal working class family. Grandparents still live very local. I still spend a lot of time living there with them, looking after them. Normal background, granddad foundry worker, grandma working as a sewing machine operative in the local area in Handsworth as well. And parents just warehousemen, and my mum being obviously working in the local area as well as a data admin worker. So literally grown up around here, gone to school around here, and just local in every way possible.
Great. So listen, one of the things before the show that we talked about was that Malvinder wanted to make sure that the viewers knew that he's not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. They're a working class family, and there's nothing wrong with that. 99.9% of us in especially the Punjabi community, that's where the background is. My dad worked in an engineering factory, my mum worked in a hosiery factory, my granddad worked in a foundry. So it's that normal story.
I think it's something to be proud of as well, because obviously,
absolutely,
it's where you come from. So be proud of your roots.
Yeah. Well, we came from nothing, right?
Of course.
Nobody gave our grandparents and our parents a chance.
That's why I always start the story from my grandparents, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here today. So they took the journey to come from India, hoping that they'll go back, but as we're aware, no one really did, and come here for us to have the future we have got today.
Do you know if your grandfather came by boat or plane?
I've heard a mixture of stories, so I couldn't really say, but okay. I know it wasn't the easiest of journeys.
Well, if you think about it, when we move, you've stayed local with your parents. So a lot of children move away, for work.
Yep.
And, parents think that's a tough thing.
Yep.
But when you think, your granddad, my granddad came on a boat in 1951.
Okay.
So 30-day journey. But imagine coming to a country where you don't speak the language, you haven't got any relatives, you've got little or no money, 4,000 miles away in 30 days.
And the crazy thing is you've got no one to turn to. You can't just go back.
No.
You can't go back home. Like if you move away to the other side of England, you can just pack your bags and head back to your hometown, but it wasn't the case for our grandparents.
And that's really nice. I had another guest, Sukrandava, who also spoke about how grateful she was for the fact that our grandparents took those really brave decisions.
Of course, very brave.
And when you sit down and think about it, like we said, no language, no money, no support, and they came and did this, right? And people today think that it's a big thing to move cities and move out of the house, right? It
just shows you the difference in generations. I personally think that generation was a lot stronger, whereas now we've got more comfortable. And taking, like I said, moving just to the other side of England or a different city, it's a big risk for us. Yeah. But if you compare it to the risk our grandparents took in the previous generations, you can't compare it.
No, but at the same time, we can't compare ourselves. The other thing is there's progress, right?
Of course.
So you're the second generation from your grandparents, so you don't expect things to be as hard either.
No, of course.
Right, there's got to be a benefit of a family being here for 2 generations.
And that's what you've got to be grateful. You can't literally ever forget what they've done for us to be here today.
Yeah. And Malvinder, we've been working together for just over a year, right?
Exactly. Yep.
The one thing that I really, really want to point out to our viewers is that you have started a business, and we'll talk about that.
Yep.
But you decided that you needed an office, which we talked about.
Yep.
Because you used to be sat on the end of your bed, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that when we did the Zoom calls.
Yep.
But now you have an office which is at your grandparents' home.
Yep.
You'd be on Baba, right?
Yep.
So that's an incredible thing to do, isn't it?
Of course.
And it just brings your family close together. So, Bibi Baba live on their own.
Yep.
In a sizable house.
Yep.
Bedrooms are empty.
Yep.
So what better way to utilise those?
Of course.
So Malvinder has his office in one of the bedrooms of his grandparents' house, and I think it's so nice. And it kind of epitomises what family life's all about, right?
Of course, 100%. It shows you the value. Look, my grandparents love it every day when I come there. I'm based in the city centre from work, but as obviously we know, working from home's become so popular at the moment. So I thought, why not spend more time with my grandparents and while I'm working at the same time? So it's the best of both worlds, to be honest.
Absolutely fantastic. So, you left school?
Yep.
Didn't graduate?
Nope.
Okay, and went and worked in a building society or a bank?
A building society.
Building society, and aptly named?
West Brom Building Society.
Okay, so how far is it from here?
Literally the main branch, 2 minutes, if that. That's walking distance.
Brilliant. So you made that decision.
Yep.
So as we were saying, it's one of the professions that we as the Indian community see as respectable or acceptable.
Yep.
And you don't need a degree to get into that sector, but it's not very well paid, is it?
Not really,
no.
To be honest with you.
No. So how long were you there for?
I did 2.5 years at that building society. Previously worked at another bank as well. So I've been in the banking industry for 3.5 years. 2 years in West Brom. It's I've learned a lot from there, so you can't knock it. I've learned a lot and I take away from it. And
what was the biggest lessons from working there for 3.5 years in that sector?
Communication. It's helped with communication a lot, because when you go there, you don't know what customers coming in. So you're dealing with a variety of people, different situations. So I think it's helped with communication skills a lot, and just getting to know people, being transparent with people, and just dealing with all sorts of different characters, to be honest.
Okay. So most people, most families, would be really happy that, especially in our community, that their son or daughter works in a bank, seen as a very respectable profession.
It is.
And as you were saying, not a lot of money in it though, especially not at the lower levels, right? So you do, you work for 2 banks, sizable companies, and then you decide to leave, right?
100%, yep.
So what drove that decision?
To be honest with you, ever since I left school, I've always wanted to go into business. That I could have told that from the age of 16, but if someone asked what, that was the part I was stuck on.
Okay.
I always knew I wanted to work for myself, and I always knew my end goal was to work for myself and to have my own company.
How old were you when you first had that thought that you wanted to be self-employed?
I would say from the get-go, from the days I left school, it was 16, 17.
15, 16, yeah? Because I was 15,
Yep.
and so, my mum and dad worked for other people, as did most people, but then we had a few relatives that had their own business. and one in particular, you know, took me to Worksop Market when I was 15 years old.
Yep.
And I was hooked. And that was it. I knew at that point, that's what I wanted to do. But again, like you, I had no idea what it was going to be, when it was going to be happening, what type of business it was going to be. But I just knew. But
that's the hardest part, because you're just waiting and waiting for like a little light bulb moment.
Yeah. So, you know, you leave school at 16 or 18?
16 I left school, actually immigrated to Canada that year.
Okay.
So went abroad for a year, experienced going to school in Canada, because you go to school till you're 18. So experienced there, come back a year later.
What did you make of Canada?
Lovely place. My dad's siblings, so my brother, my dad, they all live in Canada, and we thought, my dad was the only sibling left here, so we thought, let's give it a go. But due to the relationship with my grandparents and us being so close, we come back because they were left, they were living here by themselves, and for the love that we've got for them, it didn't feel right for them to be here, even though gradually they would have moved. But it was just that for the short term we couldn't do it, so we've done a year there. It's on my CV, under my belt, but been there, done it.
So did the whole family go?
Yeah, me, mum, dad, sister.
And basically you got homesick, right?
Yep, homesick.
And obviously grandparents. But home's home, right? And this is our home, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah, I have a sizable family in California.
Okay.
And, you know, back in the day, it was always like, Cam, come over here, come over here. But, you know, home's home.
Home's home, yeah.
And the other thing is, regardless of where you are, obviously, you know, we moved from India for economic reasons.
Of course.
But, you know, whether it's Australia, whether it's Canada, whether it's the US, you still got to go and work, right? 100%. So I just thought, you know, I'm going to uproot myself, come to California. I've still got to come and find something else to do. Yeah. Whereas you're well established here, right? Of course. It's not like you get there and there's a silver spoon ready for you. You're starting from scratch. So it depends if you're up for the challenge and you want to achieve something in that country, or you'd rather just carry on from where you are, where you're already established, and make that into a bigger foundation. Yes. So you guys came back, homesick, etc. So what was it like, you know, when you decided to come back? Did you guys worry about what other people would say? You know, usual stuff, I think it wasn't that simple. The problem that we had was 1 month for moving back, 1 month for staying, 1 month for moving back. It wasn't, the decision wasn't made straight away, it wasn't a concrete decision. So for the last 6 months, like we were there a year, for 6 months, it was every day, mum and dad coming from work, me and sister coming to school, are we going home or are we staying? And 1 month it was, we're staying, and like I said, 1 month it was going home. So it was very, very confusing times, to be honest. Was it a family decision to come back, or was did one of you drive it? Was it mum, was it dad, was it you? I would say family decision, but if my family's watching now, they'll say myself. I think it's a very difficult time when you're a teenager, because that's what I was going to come to. That, you know, your parents obviously made a decision, your dad's family's over there. But I think it's a very difficult time, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, to move, because, you know, you're well embedded with all your friends, and you're becoming an adult now. But you're still going through adolescence to a degree. And the funny story was, we actually went with a return ticket. We just didn't return. So no one actually knew we were going. It was very much, we went there for, I think it was 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. But Dad's found work and stuff out there, and we ended up just staying out there. So we didn't actually use a return ticket. So when you mention friends and stuff, they didn't know. They were expecting to see me in 2 weeks. Right. But we didn't come back. Okay. You glad you came? Yeah, 100%. Good. Good. I mean, I think it's the best country in the world that we live in. Of course. And West Brom's the best city, obviously. No, just kidding. I agree with that one. Leicester is. Right? So you decide that you're going to leave the bank. And so at that time you went into a job, didn't you? Again. And so was that with a view to starting some sort of business? Did you have an idea at that point? I had the idea while I was working in the building society. So while I was working in the building society, after hours, I started working on a business very similar to now, just getting used to the ropes. I realised that property was what I wanted to go into, and it was just very much after school, viewing properties, going to family and friends' portfolio, getting the maintenance team out, just kind of getting to the gist of things. And thinking, hold on, I like this. This is something that I can do. So when I left the building society, I was doing that. But in order to get for my business to grow, obviously you need capital to start a business. And I went into another job, which was actually working night shifts. I know. When we started That's right, speaking. We were working together. So what did mum or dad say when you said, I'm leaving the bank or the building society? What was the reaction? I think, because I've always talked about going into business, and because, like I said, I've mentioned it since I was 16, once they knew it was property, they liked the idea of property as well, something that they're familiar with. They said, if you're going to do it,
going 100% now. There's no coming back. You're still at that age where you can make it happen. Like I said, we're living at home, so I'm very lucky for that. But they said, if you're going to make it happen, they go for it 100%. Don't do it 10%, 20%. Because it was getting to the point, because obviously when you're working in the bank daytime and a property business, which is very, worked in the daytime, it's not something that you can do after hours. It got very challenging.
Yeah.
And that was the reason I made a decision that to work nights, and it jeopardised my sleep to help grow my business in the day.
How many nights did you used to work?
4 nights 1 week, 3 nights 1 week, so alternative of 4 and 3.
How old were you when you started that?
24, I'd say.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So Malvinder's mum and dad, I've obviously met them.
Yep.
You know, amazing for the support that you give him now, and the fact that, you know, you didn't stop him at that time. And for parents listening, or watching rather, you know, talk to your son or your daughter that doesn't want to follow the normal route that is set down before us, you know, and we're going to share the rest of Malvinder's story. But the thing is, sometimes we get stuck there, that we're ill-advised to advise our children. We don't really know what they want to go into because we're not in business, because your parents are not business people.
Nope.
Right? And yet they still supported you.
100%.
So if you look at the story, you know, Steve Jobs talks about it. They started Apple Computers when he was 20.
Yep.
And he said, we could afford to make some mistakes. And if we didn't get it right for 5 years, we could still go back to college,
100%.
do our law degree or whatever it was, and then still come out and we'd be okay. But the fact is that we would have tried to do what it is that we wanted to do and live out our dreams, right?
I think the key word was mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes. Doesn't matter what you do, you're bound to make mistakes.
Well, the other beauty of making mistakes is they usually cost you money, right?
Yep.
In business, you know, you make the mistake, it's going to cost you money. So the beautiful thing about your situation is that you live at home.
Yep.
So there's no mortgage to pay, there's no rent to pay. And, you know, what a brave decision to then go and work nights. Because I remember when we first started working, you literally used to come home and we were on a call, aren't we? 100%. We were on a Zoom call. So Malvinder was building his business, which is very much what I did. I went to work during the week and I ran my business at the weekends when I first started. So you've got to be prepared to put the hours in. And, you know, in 5 years, in 10 years, when this guy's a millionaire and he's driving down in his flash car, don't think it was easy, right? And it never is it?
No.
Because we've been through all the highs and lows in the last year.
A lot of people think there's a magic bullet.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone's waiting for. One day there's a magic bullet, and if you manage to get that magic bullet, that's it. You're good to go. But it does take a lot of work.
Yeah. So it's not the lottery win, right?
No.
Which is what people sometimes think it is. But I think the thing is this, that nobody really takes any notice of you when you first start.
No.
You know, I don't know about you, but a lot of my friends and relatives thought it was quite funny that I was trying to get into business.
Okay.
They thought it was a bit of a joke.
Yep.
And, you know, and I will say, who's laughing now?
Yep.
So it is a long-term thing.
100%.
And, you know, and I know yourself and my own experience and other entrepreneurs that I speak to, you've got to sacrifice a lot. You're not going out in the evenings. No. You can't spend the money that you would spend if you just lived paycheck to paycheck,
no,
right? Because you suddenly got to start thinking long-term.
Yep.
And, you know, you've invested money and in your business, in mentorship, in training and equipping yourself, right? So, you know, and it's just like, I don't think you've done anything less than anybody that goes to university and goes and does a 3 or 4 year degree.
I think it's just a different way, because I think, like you said, to all the parents watching and stuff, it's you think there's one route. When you leave school in sixth form, I was very much, my parents said you have to go to university.
Yeah.
I think they're saying it out of love. I think all parents do, but also a lot of us don't know any better. I think when you grow up and you're in the schooling system, it's very much school educates you that there's either an apprenticeship or there's either a university, and 80% of parents or kids will choose university, and there's nothing wrong with that, because my sister chose that and she's doing very well from it. And but I think it depends on each individual what you want to achieve, and I think it's sometimes about knowing the options that are out there.
And so, what about your friends? What did they think when you chose not to go to university? You know, and like you said, your sister did, and many other of your friends. What was the reaction of people when you said, I'm going to go to work?
The reaction of people that I went sixth form and stuff with was very, like, people were shocked. But my close friends, that are my close friends today, I'm very glad to say I've got a good circle of friends, and we all support each other. And to be honest with you, everyone's in business in a different way. And I think that's made a big difference, because we all support each other. And if we're struggling with one thing, I can speak to any of them about it. because they've all overcome the same issues.
Yeah. How are they? You said, you know, everybody's in business in some way.
Yep.
Explain that to me, what that is. I mean, I know, but for our viewers.
So in my close circle of friends, I've got a very close friend of mine who's does property. He's actually got a company, Atwell Property Group. We work together, so we grow our property portfolio together. I've got another, two of my best friends. They actually run a vehicle management specialist company. They've literally only launched last week, so they've been doing it. So they're in that business. I've got a couple of friends. One friend, his parents had a business, but he's grown it a lot further. So he does skip hire and van hire. So it's all mixed. It's not property related. There's a lot of different things. And then I've got a couple of friends that are in my close circle, and they're accountants. So they're very much in the corporate life. They've gone university. So it's a good mix. And I think the good thing is we all bring the best out of each other, and that's why we're all overcoming the challenges together.
Are they the same friends that you would have said were your best friends at 16 or 18?
To be honest with you, I'm lucky that yes and no. You do change friends as you go older, and I think you have to surround yourself with people on the same mission as yourself.
Yes.
And when I say that, it doesn't mean just because I'm doing property, they have to do property.
Yeah.
It just means, like, a mission of myself is to be better than I was yesterday. So it doesn't mean nothing to be business related. But if you've got friends with a positive mindset, you bring the best out of each other, and you all work towards your own goals in different ways. But you'll help each other. But I am lucky that these friends that I mentioned regarding the property company and claim specialist, I've known since I was 13, 14.
Brilliant. Michael Ondar was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he came from the corporate world, and you had some experience in the corporate world, and he said that entrepreneurs were far more helpful than people were in the corporate world, that there's a lot more politicking and playing for positions. Did you find the same?
I completely understand where he's coming from, because when you're in a corporate job, let's say for example, go back to the bank, there's 5 of you behind the cashier, the next step up is assistant manager of the branch. There's only one role of an assistant manager, but you've got 5 people going for it. So it can be a sticky situation, because there's only one opportunity. It's either you get it or either they get it.
Yes.
So it's very much you against them.
And that obviously causes the friction, right?
Of course.
Because you, like you said, you're young, you're ambitious, you know, and you're loud, and you haven't got experience, and the bank's telling you there's one position and that's available in 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is. And so contrast that to, because, you know, some of our viewers will be self-employed and have businesses, and others will be working in the corporate sector.
Of course.
So contrast that to being in the entrepreneurial world. How's that different?
I think when you're an entrepreneur, you realise that there's a lot more opportunity. And I think you realise that it's all a mindset. It's a shift of mindset. And I think once you get the shift of mindset, you start seeing the opportunities. In the corporate world, it's very much, are you lucky enough to get the job? Even though you've served all the customers, you've offered the best experience, are you lucky enough to get a promotion? In the entrepreneurial world, you've got to create your own luck. And I think that's a key thing. When you understand that, why wasn't I lucky enough to be a businessman? Why wasn't I lucky enough to win the lottery? And you start thinking, hold on, I've got to create my own luck. I think all entrepreneurs, they understand that we've got to go out there and you've got to duck and dive and do what you got to do to get there. And that's the reason they will help you, because if they're older than you, they'll probably 10 years ago, you're a spitting image of them.
Yes.
And that's why with my friends and stuff, we all understand that it's not easy what we do. There is a lot of challenges, but you have to help each other and give the best advice.
I think the thing with that is that, like you said, you know, entrepreneurs usually are people that have this mindset of abundance. So when you've got 5 of you going for one job, that's scarcity, isn't it? There's 5 of you, one job. So entrepreneurs, so your skip hire guy, your property guy, your accountant guy, you're a property guy, you know there's opportunities in all those fields. And those opportunities are unlimited, right? Of
course. It's like people say, so my best friend, he does property as well. People say, oh, like, he's your competition. But if you use it in a positive mindset, how is he competition? If you work together, you can conquer more, because you can use his ideas, I use my ideas, and that way we'll get more from it. But if you see it as competition, it's well,
you know, like you said, competition. And I know that you actually work with him now, don't you? He actually gives you properties that he doesn't want to deal with. So, you know, so this idea that business is cutthroat and all the rest of it is, I don't know whether it's it was ever like that.
Yep.
Because I've always had entrepreneurs that help me.
Of course.
And the other thing is, of course, you know, you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
100%.
So, and corporate mentality is very different. And, you know, all my friends are entrepreneurs,
Yep.
and we're always looking out for each other.
Yep.
We're always talking about opportunities, and they understand, you know, it's challenging and the hours can be sometimes very, very
Yep.
long. Again, we were talking, you know, before the show. I rocked up here at 9 o'clock this morning, left home about 7:30, and, you know, I'll get home about 9:30 tonight. But it is what it is.
It is what it is.
The other thing is, of course, is if you love what you do,
Yep, it's not a job.
it doesn't feel like work, does it?
No.
Yeah. Did banking ever feel like something that you loved, or did it always feel like work?
I was lucky that I worked with a good team.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good. Like I've enjoyed my time there.
Yeah.
And it's made me what I am today. I take from the experience. But it was a job. You've got to be there at a set time. You got to leave at a set time. It's very much, it's a routine.
Yeah.
And routine is good as well. It is good, but it was a job, 100%. It felt like a job.
So what's it like being an entrepreneur? No, actually, before we do that, so you got this job, you know, night shift.
Yep.
It was in a care home.
Yep.
So not easy work, right?
No.
You know, difficult work.
Especially in the pandemic, it got more difficult.
Yes, of course. And then you're coming home. I think we used to have our Zoom meeting on a Tuesday morning.
Yep, Tuesday
You
morning.
what time did you used to get home?
So I used to start at 7 p.m. and finish at 7 a.m.
Yeah, and we used to have a meeting at 10 o'clock, right?
Yep.
What was that like? So you decided to start business.
Yep.
And the other thing, of course, is you had one of the biggest setbacks that anybody could have, because you were going to start with your friend, weren't you?
Yep.
What happened there?
Things just didn't work out. We realised that we were on a different path. I still got a lot of respect for him today. So if I wouldn't have got into property if it wasn't for him, he did bring the idea. We worked together. So up until this day, I've got a lot of respect for him. But it was just we realised that we're at different chapters of our life. And for me, it was very much that it's either now or never. So I went for I took the chance.
Yeah, because when you originally came to me,
Yep.
when we were starting to work together just before the pandemic,
Yep.
there were 2 of you.
Yep.
Then by the time we actually started training, there was 1 of you.
Yep, myself.
And I don't know whether you remember, I said to you, listen, you know, it's really good that it's happened right now,
Yep.
rather than 6 months or a year down the road.
100%.
But it's, you know, it's adversity, isn't it?
Yep.
And then at that time, you obviously have gone into partnership with somebody for a reason.
Yep.
And like you said, he was leading that.
Yep.
And yet you're now left making the decision
Yep.
as to do you go ahead and or not, as the
Yep.
case may be. So you decided to go ahead.
Yep.
And so tell me about the business that we started setting up, back in February last year?
February last year, and then it launched for us in summertime. But
Yes.
February was where I was in my bedroom, coming back from night shift, and literally doing what I could do, trying to get it all together.
Yeah, right. So you did get it together.
Yep.
So this business has been set up all during the pandemic,
Yep.
right? So many businesses, so many entrepreneurs have done that in the past. Some huge companies have been formed. So, you know, when you start thinking about, oh, sorry, it's a pandemic, I can't do it, here's living proof. Yeah, he's done it. So you wanted to get into property.
Yep.
And so we decided that we were going to start a property management company.
That's correct.
Okay. So the benefits of that is that you don't need as much money as
Yep.
to buying your own property.
Of course.
You're dealing with other people's property.
Yep.
And of course, that gives you the experience, right?
Yep.
So, so we started that about February
Yep.
2020.
Yep.
How long before you gave up your job?
I gave up my job just November 2020.
Right. So, you know, it took about 10 months
Yep.
of doing night shift
Yep.
and doing the business, right?
Yep.
And then I remember again, you know, we were having the conversation about the salary,
Yep.
the profit from the business equaling or being equal to the salary.
Of course.
And what did that feel like when you finally sort of handed your notice in and thought, that's it?
It was a great feeling, but also it's very much, you're in the real world now. You've got no paycheck coming in every month. If you don't do the work and you don't go ahead and go get new clients and do your admin paperwork, you're not getting paid at the end of it. So it's a very different lifestyle. So a lot of people think, oh, going into business, it's easy, it's a silver spoon. It's better in the long run, especially with the goals that I have. But in the short term, it is challenging.
Yes. Yes. So you're not on the clock anymore?
No.
So whereas in employment, you know, you turn up at 9 o'clock,
Yep.
they start paying you, right?
Yep.
and then you finish at 5:30 and the clock stops.
And as bad as it sounds, doesn't matter if you work good on that day or you don't. You're going to get paid regardless.
That's right. So, you know, in that way, being an entrepreneur, having your own business is very, very honest, isn't it?
It's very
if
honest.
you don't put the effort in, there ain't no money coming in, right?
You're getting zero.
Yeah. And so, did that ever frighten you?
To be honest with you, no.
No. But you see, I think the key to that was, A, we were training.
Yep.
We knew what we were doing.
Yep.
Then we waited. I remember we discussed, when is it that you hand your notice in? And I
Yep.
said, when you get to such and such point,
Yep.
that's the time to do it, right?
I think the reason it even frightened me because, like I said, I always want to get into business from young. I've done so much research into it, and like I've surrounded myself with people that run their business. I knew what I was getting myself into, so I prepared myself for it. I wouldn't say that I was 100%. It doesn't matter if I don't get paid. Of course, there's an element of risk.
Of course.
But with everything you do, there's an element of risk, and sometimes you just gotta take the chance. To be honest.
Yeah. So you happy?
Very happy.
Yeah. Don't want to go back to the bank? I mean, it's just down the road.
Don't know. I might change my mind on the way home, but nah, I doubt it.
So, what is it like being an entrepreneur full time? Because we talk about the business. So you do property management.
Yep.
But you specialise, don't you?
Yep.
So you don't manage anything and everything.
No.
So it's residential property.
Residential.
Right. So lots of our viewers will be familiar with that.
Yep.
Because we own huge swathes of investment properties that we want to let out.
Yep.
Right. But you know, one of the problems with being a landlord and a property owner is that, you know, tenants sometimes don't pay their rent.
Yep.
And of course, sometimes the property's empty.
Yep.
Right, so both of those things, as a property owner, and all
Yep.
my fellow property owners will recognise, are major pains in the backside.
Yep. And I think the third one is condition of property.
Sure, right?
That's always in the back of your mind because when they hand the keys and they've gone, as
What
you're
have they
aware,
done to it?
Yeah, what have they done to it? And there's a lot of situations out there where it's not in the same condition that it was when you gave the keys to the tenants.
Yeah, and a very interesting thing happened in my property journey. So we evicted some tenants
Okay.
through the court.
Yep.
They came in on Friday afternoon and handed the keys in. And I had a builder going around on Saturday morning.
Yep.
And I used to have my estate agency business in Leicester at the time.
Yep.
So I'm driving down and say, Chris rings, phone rings. I said, hi Chris, how you doing? He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to the office.
Yep.
He said, you might want to come down to this property. I said, yeah, sure. Is anything wrong? He said, you just need to come and see it. And what had happened is that they'd handed the keys in and then obviously went out for a drink.
Okay.
And then there was 3 of them just lying in this property on the floor.
Wow.
They must have been so drunk.
Wow.
And to the point where I actually kicked one of them on the foot to see if they were alive. And so, but the joys of owning properties, right?
Of course.
And luckily, the squatter law had come in
Okay.
at that time.
Yep.
And so I rang the police, and what could the police do? Just had to kind of just wake them up and eventually leave. The interesting thing about that was that we obviously evicted them for non-payment of rent.
Yep.
So when I walked into this property, there was 2 penny and 1 penny pieces all over the house on the floor.
Okay.
We picked up about £120 worth.
Okay.
They were just throwing them on the floor.
I've been in a situation myself, probably not up to that extent, but I don't know what it is with these tenants, but they have coins and everything on the windowsills, bedroom floor, everywhere. To be
Incredible,
honest.
isn't it?
Yep.
And then these same people can't pay the rent.
Yep.
So money's a mindset thing, isn't it?
It's a mindset thing. It's just a different mindset. They don't value the coppers.
Yeah. So your business,
Yep.
it kind of removes some of this pain of non-payment of rent, vacant properties and condition of properties,
Yep.
isn't it? So what is it that you do that's different to, you know, what property management companies do?
So my company's called HomePath in Birmingham City Centre, and we've branded ourselves as the guaranteed rent agent.
So you guarantee rent
Yep.
for landlords.
Yep.
So how long do you take the property on for?
We go for long term.
Okay, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
We can do in between 3 to 5 year contracts.
3 to 5 years?
Yep.
So you will take my property off me
Yep.
and for between 3 and 5 years, and
Yep.
you guarantee the rent?
Yep.
Regardless if there's a tenant in there or not?
Yep. Regardless.
Okay, what about the condition of the property?
We're very selective of what we take on.
Okay.
So it's for guaranteed rent. It can only work with exclusive and selected properties.
So if somebody's got a dump of a property,
Yep.
you're not interested, right?
Not
So
interested.
you're looking for quality properties.
Quality properties.
Okay. So if they then, so there's a qualification criteria then, isn't it? So
Yep.
you don't take on anything and everything, right? So you select your properties
Yep.
and select the area they're in.
We're open to areas, but Birmingham close to the city centre, but we work all over the Midlands.
Okay, so you're a Midlands-based business.
Yep.
And so so if I'm a landlord, I call you.
Yep.
And then you come and inspect my property.
Yep.
And see if it's, so what are you looking for in terms of, so if I'm a landlord now, so landlords, please don't know, if you're looking for guaranteed rents, so what's your criteria for what type of property does it have to be?
So each property we go out to, we have a checklist in mind. We'll have a checklist with us. We'll go there. We're looking for good quality properties. So we've been to properties where they've been bodged up and you're hiding problems. It's not something we're interested in because it doesn't build a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
We're looking to build a long-term relationship with our clientele,
Yes.
so with our landlords. We're looking for properties that are being done up recently, up to a good standard. The motto I have, if you wouldn't live in it yourself, you can't rent it. So it's the same what I say to landlords. When they say to me, I go, if you wouldn't live in it yourself, you can't rent it out.
So what Malvinder's saying is, if the property's not good enough for you to live in, he's not interested in renting it, because whether they're tenants or whether they own the property, that doesn't mean they're willing to accept poor quality proproperties, right?
We should all have a good living standard. So
Malvinder, tell me something. You know, I've been in property for 25 odd years. I ran one of the biggest, well, the biggest estate agency business in Leicestershire. A lot of our community somehow think that tenants are willing to accept poor quality properties, don't they? Yeah.
You'll be surprised with what you see on the market.
Yeah, I've got a very dear friend of mine, and you shall remain nameless. They had 25, 30 student units. It was a conversion.
Okay.
Very, very poor. Basically, all they did is divided up an old building. And it was very dark, and it wasn't lit very well, so it didn't feel secure. And I remember going to see it, and both the partners were there. And I said, I'm ever so sorry, we don't want to deal with this. And so he said, Kam, what's the problem? I said, the problem is, it's such poor quality, the security looks terrible. I'd never want to send my child here. And he said, what's wrong with it? I said, you've got university-age children. Bring them, or I'm asking you the question, would you let your children live here? And of course, silence. I said, well, there you go. You know, there's my answer. So if you have a property, it needs to be of a good quality. Nobody wants to live in poor quality accommodation. But of course, there's rules and regulations as well, isn't there? So if that property isn't up to standard, chances are the safety measures aren't in place
That's
as well.
what I wanted to go on to. So within our checklist, it's very much what meets the eye. So if the property's in good condition, like I said, the motto, if you won't live in it yourself, we can't rent it. But then behind the background, it's got to be compliant. And a lot of people don't understand, and like people say, "Nahi koi gal nahi, char do rent the theek hai," and that's what we want people to understand. You're breaking the law in certain situations.
So what are you looking for? What safety measures do landlords fail on, and what do you see most common problems? Just
as we're aware, the property in England, especially in Birmingham, is a lot of Victorian terraced houses. That's what we deal with. These houses weren't built for today's living. They were built for years ago. But they haven't been updated, so I'm not talking to the eye. It might be done up to the best standard, but I'm talking in regards to compliant measures, such as ones of them recently, fuse box and stuff like that. It's very old school. It's a risk hazard. And as we're aware, you have to have an electrical EICR certificate now, which has just kicked in this year, and that's just kicked half of the properties out the window. Straight away, because the fuse boxes and the wiring of the property is not up to today's health and safety standards. And then in regards to obviously gas certificates, EPCs need requiring, but the main thing is just health and safety. And that's why these measures have got stricter. And as you're aware, being in property yourself, it's getting stricter and stricter every year as you go on.
So if a landlord's got a property like that, do you advise them? So if I had a property that wasn't really up to standard, you know, would you come out and have a look at that?
We're open to come out. We've got an in-house team, and we can get the property brought up to standard.
So you can refurbish my property? So, you know, if you've got a property that isn't up to scratch, you know, give Malvinder a call, he'll come and inspect, and he'll advise you on all the measures that you need to take to bring it up to standard. So two things is, you know, you have a legal obligation. You know, some of those things that you get wrong could be just a fine, but other things are actually a criminal offence. Right, so it could land you with a fine and or in jail for some of these things. So it's not a laughing matter.
It's not a laughing matter,
longer, right?
Because it's not a crime like you're going in and robbing a bank. It's just something that's behind the scenes. People don't understand how severe it can be and the risk you're putting other people at. And I think that's why you've got to be open and let people know. And I think, like I said, because the compliance are changing every year, just because it was all right in 2020, it's not okay in 2021 because it's getting stricter and stricter each year.
And as it should.
As it should. And then, but what people forget is, because it met last year's requirements, they automatically think they'll met this year's requirements. But because it's changing so quick and so rapid, you've got to stay on top of things.
I think the other thing is, Malvinder, I remember from my days running our lettings business that a lot of our community, manage their own properties. They're self-managed, don't they?
Yep, a lot of them do.
And they kind of have, so there's no regard for safety, is there? No. They usually have private tenants, right? Not properly documented tenancy agreements.
Yep.
So they could really be running the risk of major fines and criminal convictions, couldn't they?
A lot of the clientele, a lot of the landlords that phone us I would say 90% of them have all managed in the past.
Yes.
But they've had such a bad experience that it's called them to call out, someone to call out a company to come manage it because they want someone that they've had such a bad experience that they don't want that again.
Yes.
But I think what it is until people don't have that bad experience that puts them off, people carry on going for as long as they can.
But it's about value, isn't it?
Yep.
So they don't value their time.
No.
And they think that they can do it themselves until they can't.
Yep.
Right? So then they call out yourself and you go out and have a look at that, right?
That's right.
So what's rental demand like at the moment?
In Birmingham, it's through the roof. There's a lot of demand for it.
Yeah. And so more tenants out there than properties?
More tenants.
Yeah, so good quality properties getting let all the time?
Yeah, good quality. And with myself and my company, we do from all sorts of houses. So from 2-bedroom terraced houses to the latest one we put on the market, 4-bedroom detached in Solihull. So we've got corporate clientele.
Yes.
That work in the city centre, work in Solihull town centre, and we are bringing good working class tenants to the properties.
Yes, yes. So the other thing is that you also buy properties for cash, don't you?
Yep.
Right, so you have investors on board, and you do that. So what are prices like right now?
Right now, high. That's the only one word I can use. Very high.
Well, we've spoken about it, haven't we? So my thoughts are that beware.
Yep.
Because nothing goes up and up and up forever, right? They could be. I think we're getting to that.
If you
stage.
study the property industry, we're aware why it's so high at the moment.
Yes.
It's due to obviously the stamp duty, which has been extended, stuff like that, and that's increased people to buy, and that's why the demand is so high and the prices are so high.
So, Malvinder, I want to talk to you now. You're relatively young.
Yep.
And you're very young for an entrepreneur. So, what does the future hold? What do you see? Because for me, having worked with you for over a year now, so we're talking about being a millionaire, aren't we?
Fingers crossed.
Hard work. Don't cross them. Work with them, right?
Of course.
So, what are the prospects of that? When we talk, when you and I talk, and I say, look, Malvinder, we can be in 6 figures and over in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
Right. So in the top 1% of people on salaries.
Yep.
What does that feel like?
It's a feeling that I can't wait to achieve, to be honest.
Yes.
My hand's itching to achieve it, but it's great because what it is when you've worked for someone and then you've gone into running your own business, you realise that when you're an entrepreneur and you're running a business, there's no cap. You can carry on.
Yes.
So it's as far as you're willing to go and
Yes.
as much effort you're willing to put in. But when you're working as an employee, everything's capped.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how many hours you're doing. If you're doing overtime, you're capped at a salary. And I think that feeling for me gives me excitement, knowing that it's an endless limit. You can just carry on until what you want to achieve.
Yeah. One of the things that people will talk about is, this mentorship and coaching. It's all woo-woo and it's a bit funny. We've worked with together for over a year now.
Yep.
And so what would you say to people thinking about coaching and mentorship? What has that brought you?
A lot of value, 100%.
Yeah.
It's 100% something that I recommend, but you do have to look out to who you're going to be mentored with. If they haven't achieved what you're looking to achieve,
Of course.
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But if they have, like yourselves, who's run an estate agency in Leicester, the biggest one, it makes sense because they've made mistakes that you can stop, that you don't have to make.
Yeah, you're leveraging their experience, aren't you?
100%.
So, Malvinder's go and work with somebody that you're really comfortable with.
Yep.
Because working with me is not cheap.
Yep.
But then again, not working with me could be far more expensive, right?
Of course.
So what I was going to say was that we're achieving 6 figures.
Yep.
It's just the first stage, isn't it, for us?
Yeah,
the program that we've put together is that, first of all, we get to that 6 figures, that 100K a year.
Yep.
right? Then we really start having
Yep.
fun, don't we?
Yep.
Because that gives you the lifestyle that you need.
Yep.
And then we start building a proper portfolio.
I think it's all about setting a goal. So that's the first goal that we've set ourselves.
Yes.
Once we've achieved that, it's going to be bigger and better.
Yes.
But it's all about setting it in steps. So I like to work in like a 1 to 2 year plan. Anything bigger than that is too far to think ahead.
Yes.
Setting goals. I know what the bigger plan is, but I know to get there, I've got to achieve this. Step 1 to get to step 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So time waits for no man. So we're just about coming to the end of the show. What I'd like from you is if you could address the audience, you know, mums and dads and relatively young people sitting on their sofas watching the program.
Yep.
What advice would you give them? You know, of what experience can you share that could help them? Perhaps they're thinking about starting business.
Yep.
Perhaps you know, their son or daughter's asked, "I want to be an entrepreneur."
Yep.
What would you say to them?
One, you have to give it your all. So give it your all, give it your 100%. Second thing is do something that you're passionate about. And then that way it doesn't feel like a job.
Yes.
And the third thing is, which I'm a big believer of, surround yourself with good people. So like you said, the 5 people that surround yourself, they represent you.
Absolutely.
And if they're looking to better themselves, it doesn't mean, like I said, if you're looking to start a business in cars or in property, they do not have to do the same thing. But they have to be on a goal where they're looking to better themselves from what they were yesterday. And once you've got a mindset of people that you can pick the phone up to and just say, look, I've had a rough day, business not going good, they'll pick you up, and that is moral support.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
It makes a big difference.
Yeah. So you are the sum of the 5 people
100%.
that you spend most time with,
Yep.
right?
And a big thing that I would say is educate your family as well. So, because I've gone from going sixth form, parents wanting me to go to university, but to now them understanding what I'm looking to achieve. It's
Yes.
being open with what you're trying to achieve. Don't just keep it to yourself.
Yes.
Educate your family, because they've supported you this far. They're the ones that are going to take you to the next step.
Yeah, because we did that, didn't we? Because I met your parents. I've actually been to your house
Yeah, yeah,
now,
yep.
but I met your mum and dad on a Zoom call
Yep.
of any doubts that they had.
Yep.
How helpful was that?
It made a big difference.
Didn't it? We
Yep.
really, we got the
It's because
buy-in.
it's coming from someone that's been there and done it.
Yeah.
But when we're just talking to between ourselves, it's if you're only in a circle that's worked in foundries and worked in as a warehouseman, like my grandfather and my dad, which I highly respect. There's nothing wrong with it.
That's right.
But if you're only surrounded with that crowd, it's that's what you're gonna.
Yeah.
You don't know nothing better.
That's right. Because your dad totally changed his mind about
Yep.
one particular area of business after we had that conversation,
100%.
wasn't he?
Yep.
So that's it, I'm afraid. So no more. So will you come back in 12 months' time
I'd love
and
to.
share with our viewers what's happened so far? Because I'm really excited in terms of what we can achieve
Yep.
in the next year, right?
Yep.
So promise to do that.
100%.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Cam. Appreciate it.
Been an absolute pleasure. So guys, end of another show. You know, they go too fast. We will be back at the same time next week with another fantastic guest sharing their story, hopefully educating and learning together and inspiring. So I hope you took some really good points away from this show. And until next week, I wish you a fantastic week, and I will see you at the same time, same place next week.